Welcome to Tales by Felix, where every story unlocks a new world. Remember to subscribe, like and share. Let's begin. The penthouse gleamed with sterile elegance, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the glittering cityscape of New York, marble floors reflecting the soft glow of a crystal chandelier. Seraphina Thorne stood in the center of it all, her hands cradling her slightly rounded belly, her eyes sparkling with a secret she could no longer keep. She wore a flowing ivory dress, her auburn hair cascading in waves, and her smile radiated a warmth that could melt even the iciest heart. Tonight was the night she'd tell Magnus, her husband of 5 years, that they were expecting their first child. She'd planned it meticulously, a candlelit dinner, his favorite Bordeaux, and a tiny velvet box containing a silver locket engraved with a sonogram image. Her heart fluttered as she heard the elevator ping. Magnus was home. "Darling," she called, her voice bright as she turned toward the foyer. But the man who stepped out wasn't the Magnus she'd fallen in love with, the charming tech visionary with a crooked smile and promises of forever. This Magnus was all sharp edges, tailored black suit, jaw set like granite, and eyes cold as the steel in his company servers. "Seraphina," he said, his voice clipped, dropping his briefcase with a thud. "We need to talk." Her smile faltered, but she stepped forward, holding out the velvet box. "I have something to tell you too, Magnus. Something wonderful." He raised a hand, cutting her off. "No. You listen." He didn't sit, didn't look at the table she'd spent hours setting. "This isn't working. You're not enough anymore." The words hit like a physical blow. Seraphina's breath caught, her fingers tightening around the box. "What are you talking about?" Magnus paced, his polished shoes clicking against the marble. "You're outdated, Seraphina. Like last-gen software. I've outgrown you. My world moves faster now, and he gestured vaguely at her, his lip curling. "You're slowing me down." Her knees trembled, but she forced herself to stand tall. "Magnus, I'm pregnant. We're having a baby." For a fleeting moment, his eyes widened, but the flicker of humanity vanished as quickly as it came. He laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "A baby? That's your play. God, Seraphina, you're even more desperate than I thought." "Desperate?" Her voice cracked, tears burning her eyes. "This is our child, Magnus. Our future." "There is no our," he snapped, stepping closer, towering over her. "I'm done. I've already found someone who fits my vision. Cassandra Vale. She's everything you're not, sharp, ambitious, relevant." He spat the last word like an accusation. Seraphina's world tilted. Cassandra Vale, the sleek, calculating PR executive who'd been orbiting Magnus' company for months. She'd seen the way Cassandra lingered at board meetings, her laughter too loud, her touches too familiar. But she'd trusted Magnus. She'd believed in their love. "You're leaving me for her?" Seraphina whispered, clutching the box so tightly it dug into her palm. "While I'm carrying your child?" Magnus shrugged, unbuttoning his jacket with infuriating calm. "You'll get a settlement. Enough to disappear quietly. I don't want a scene, Seraphina. It's bad for the brand." The brand. Thorne Tech, Magnus' tech empire, was his true love. She saw it now. The man she'd married was gone, replaced by a machine obsessed with power and perception. "Get out," she said, her voice low but steady. "If I'm so irrelevant, then leave." He smirked, grabbing his briefcase. "You'll regret this. You're nothing without me." As the elevator doors closed behind him, Seraphina sank to the floor, the velvet box slipping from her fingers. The sonogram locket glinted in the chandelier's light, a tiny beacon of hope in a world that had just shattered. The headlines came like a storm. Thorne Tech CEO's wife unstable, sources say. Magnus Thorne's marriage implodes amid scandal. Paparazzi photos of Seraphina, tear-streaked and clutching her coat outside their penthouse, were splashed across tabloids. Anonymous insiders painted her as erratic, clingy, a liability to Magnus' pristine image. Meanwhile, photos of Magnus and Cassandra at exclusive galas, her in a shimmering red gown, him grinning like a conqueror, dominated social media. Seraphina sat in a dimly lit coffee shop, her hoodie pulled low, scrolling through X posts on her phone. The vitriol was relentless. "Gold digger got what she deserved," one user wrote. Magnus upgraded to a better model, another quipped. She wanted to scream that it was all lies, that Magnus had orchestrated this smear campaign, but who would believe her? She was a nobody now, stripped of her identity as Mrs. Thorne. Her phone buzzed. A text from her old friend Lila, the only one who'd reached out since the news broke. "Sarah, you okay? I saw the headlines. Where are you?" Seraphina typed back, her fingers trembling. "I'm fine. Just need to get away." She didn't mention the eviction notice Magnus' lawyers had sent, or the frozen bank accounts, or the fact that she'd sold her wedding ring to afford a bus ticket out of the city. She boarded a Greyhound that night, her belongings stuffed into a single duffel bag. The city lights faded as the bus wound through rural roads, heading toward a place she'd found online. Willow Hollow, a tiny artisan village nestled in the mountains, known for its reclusive craftspeople and quiet beauty. It was a place where no one would know her name, or her shame. As the bus rumbled on, Seraphina pressed her hand to her belly, whispering to the life inside her. "We'll be okay, little one. I promise." But the words felt hollow, and the weight of Magnus' betrayal pressed against her chest like a stone. Willow Hollow was a world apart from New York's chaos. Cobblestone streets wound through quaint shops and studios, where artisans hammered metal, wove textiles, and sculpted clay. The air smelled of pine and wood smoke, and the mountains loomed like silent guardians. Seraphina rented a tiny cottage on the village's edge, using the last of her cash. It was sparse but cozy, with a small fireplace and a window overlooking a creek. For days, she barely left the cottage, paralyzed by grief. But one morning, the sunlight streaming through the window caught on the silver locket she'd kept from that awful night. She opened it, staring at the sonogram. Her baby deserved more than a broken mother. She wandered into the village, drawn to a jewelry studio where an elderly silversmith, Marta, worked with quiet precision. Marta noticed Seraphina's fascination with a half-finished pendant and invited her to try shaping a piece of wire. Seraphina hesitated, then took the pliers. Her hands, unsteady at first, found a rhythm. She twisted the wire into a delicate spiral, embedding a tiny quartz crystal she'd found by the creek. "It's raw, but there's something there," Marta said, her eyes sharp with approval. "You've got a feel for this." Seraphina spent hours in the studio, learning to cut gemstones and solder metal. The work was meditative, a way to channel her pain into something tangible. She began sketching designs, swirling pendants inspired by the creek's flow, rings that mimicked the mountain's curves. Each piece felt like a fragment of her heart, transformed into something beautiful. One evening, as she polished a necklace, Marta sat beside her. "You're running from something, aren't you?" the old woman asked, her voice gentle but direct. Seraphina stiffened, then nodded. "I needed a fresh start." Marta's eyes softened. "This village has a way of healing broken things. Keep making your art, child. It'll tell your story when you're ready." Seraphina smiled faintly, clutching the necklace. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of purpose. The Willow Hollow market buzzed with life every Saturday, artisans displaying their wares under colorful canopies. Seraphina, nervous but determined, set up a small table with her first collection. A dozen pieces, each one a blend of raw gemstones and intricate metalwork. She wore a simple linen dress, her hair tied back, hoping to blend in. The morning was slow, with only a few curious browsers. Then a man approached, his presence commanding despite his unassuming attire, jeans, a tailored blazer, and a scarf that seemed out of place in the summer heat. His dark hair was streaked with silver, and his green eyes held an intensity that made Seraphina's breath catch. "These are yours," he asked, picking up a pendant shaped like a teardrop, with a sapphire at its heart. His voice was low, cultured, with a hint of an accent she couldn't place. "Yes," she said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I made them." He studied the pendant, turning it in the light. "There's pain in this, but also resilience. It's extraordinary." Seraphina blushed, unsure how to respond. "Thank you. It's just something I do to process." He smiled faintly, setting the pendant down. "I'm Kalen Vance. I collect art that speaks. Your work does." He handed her a card, simple but embossed with gold. "I'd like to discuss your future. Somewhere private." She hesitated, glancing at Marta, who gave a subtle nod. "There's a cafe down the street," Seraphina said. We can talk there. At the cafe, over steaming mugs of chamomile tea, Kalen revealed he was a billionaire art collector, known for discovering obscure talents and turning them into global names. Your work has a voice, he said, leaning forward. But you're hiding. Why? Seraphina's fingers tightened around her mug. I'm starting over. I don't want my past following me. He nodded, as if he understood more than she'd said. I can help you build something bigger than this market. A brand. A legacy. But you'd need to trust me. She studied him, searching for ulterior motives. His gaze was steady, not predatory like Magnus had become. Why me? She asked. Because, he said, his voice soft but firm, I see a spark in you, and I believe in what it could become. Kalen's offer was staggering. A private studio, funding for materials, and connections to exclusive galleries, all with one condition. Her identity would remain secret until she was ready. The mystique will draw them in, he said during their second meeting, held in his sleek, minimalist office overlooking the village. Let them fall in love with your art before they know your story. Seraphina sat across from him, her hands clasped to hide their trembling. What's in it for you? She asked, her voice edged with caution. You don't even know me. Kalen leaned back, his expression unreadable. I've built my fortune on seeing potential where others don't. Your designs, they're not just jewelry. They're stories, raw and honest. The world needs that. And frankly, I'm bored with predictable investments. She laughed, surprised by her own boldness. So I'm your pet project. His lips twitched. You're no one's pet, Seraphina. I'm offering you a canvas. Paint what you want. The next week, a delivery arrived at her cottage. Crates of gemstones, tools, and a contract outlining Kalen's investment. She signed it, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. She spent days in her new studio, a converted barn filled with natural light, crafting pieces that felt like extensions of her soul. A bracelet woven with amethysts, inspired by the night she'd cried herself to sleep. A choker studded with emeralds, echoing the hope she'd felt at the market. One evening, Kalen visited, bringing a bottle of wine and a sketchbook. Show me what's next, he said, settling into a chair. She hesitated, then slid her sketches across the table. Bold designs, each one more ambitious than the last. I want to create something that feels unbreakable, she said. Like it could survive anything. He studied the sketches, his fingers tracing a design for a crown-like tiara. This, he said, tapping the page. This is your signature piece. Start here. As they talked, Seraphina felt something shift inside her. The pain of Magnus' betrayal was still there, but it was no longer a weight, it was fuel. She wasn't just surviving, she was creating. And with Kalen's belief in her, she began to believe in herself. The barn studio glowed under the soft light of hanging lanterns, their warm flicker casting shadows on Seraphina's work table. Gemstones, sapphires, garnets, and moonstones glinted like captured stars, scattered among her sketches and tools. She hunched over a delicate necklace, weaving silver wire into intricate knots that mimicked the tangled emotions she'd carried since Magnus' betrayal. Each piece she created was a reclamation, a way to stitch her shattered self back together. Willow Hollow's artisan community had begun to notice her work, though she kept her identity guarded. She sold her pieces through Marta's studio, using the pseudonym The Diamond Whisperer, a name Kalen had suggested to spark intrigue. Let the art speak before you do, he'd said, his voice steady with conviction. The name caught on faster than she'd expected. One crisp morning, as Seraphina delivered a new batch of jewelry to Marta's shop, a young woman with a camera lingered nearby, snapping photos of the display. These are unreal, she said, her voice bright with excitement. Who's the artist? Marta, ever protective, gave a coy smile. Just a local talent. Calls herself the Diamond Whisperer. The woman's eyes lit up. That's a killer name. I'm a blogger. Mind if I feature these on my site? My readers are obsessed with unique finds. Seraphina, standing in the back room, froze. She hadn't anticipated this. Marta glanced at her, reading her hesitation, then nodded to the blogger. Go ahead. Just keep the artist anonymous. That night, the blogger's post went viral on X, with thousands of likes and reposts. Found the next big thing in Willow Hollow, the caption read, alongside photos of Seraphina's shimmering designs. Comments flooded in, "These are hauntingly beautiful. Who is the Diamond Whisperer? I need that ring in my life." By morning, orders poured into Marta's shop, overwhelming the small operation. Seraphina sat in her cottage, staring at her phone as notifications pinged. "This is too fast," she whispered to herself, her hand resting on her growing belly. But a thrill ran through her, a sense that she was building something unstoppable. Kalen arrived the next day, his scarf fluttering in the autumn breeze. "You're a phenomenon," he said, setting a tablet on her table, open to a fashion forum buzzing about the Diamond Whisperer. "But we need to scale up. Discreetly." "I'm not ready for the spotlight," Seraphina said, her voice tight. "If Magnus finds out." "He won't," Kalen cut in, his green eyes sharp. "Not yet. We'll use shell companies to handle distribution. Your name stays out of it. For now, focus on creating." She nodded, her fingers tracing the edge of a new sketch, a choker with jagged obsidian shards, inspired by the night she'd left New York. "I want every piece to feel like a fight one," she said. Kalen's lips curved into a rare smile. "That's why they love you. Your work bleeds truth." In New York, Magnus Thorne's world was a fortress of glass and steel, but hairline fractures were beginning to show. Thornteca's stock had dipped after a minor data breach, dismissed by analysts as a blip but amplified by whispers on X. "Thorne slipping," one post read. "Too busy playing playboy to run his company." The comment stung, though Magnus would never admit it. He sat in his corner office, a sleek expanse overlooking Manhattan, swirling a glass of scotch. Cassandra Vale lounged on the leather couch, her red lipstick stark against her pale skin as she scrolled through her tablet. "You're trending again," she said, her tone clipped. "Not in a good way." Magnus scoffed, loosening his tie. "It's noise. People love to hate the winner." Cassandra's eyes narrowed. "It's not just noise. There's a pattern. Small leaks, bad press, even that ridiculous rumor about your tax filings. Someone's orchestrating this." He waved her off. "You're paranoid. I've got enemies. It comes with the territory." But Cassandra wasn't wrong. Kalen Vance, from the shadows, had begun a subtle campaign. He'd hired a discreet PR firm to plant stories, not lies, but carefully curated truths about Magnus' less savory business practices. A missed environmental regulation here, a shady vendor deal there. Nothing to topple him yet, but enough to chip away at his godlike image. That evening, at a rooftop gala, Magnus worked the room, his charm dialed to maximum. He shook hands with investors, laughed with board members, and posed for photos with Cassandra, who clung to his arm like a trophy. But as he toasted to Thornteca's unstoppable future, a guest, a tech journalist with a sharp smile, approached. "Magnus, any comment on the data breach?" she asked, recorder in hand. "Some say it's a sign of deeper issues." His smile tightened. "Thorntech is rock solid. You know how these things get blown out of proportion." The journalist tilted her head. "And what about the Diamond Whisperer? Word is, her jewelry's stealing the spotlight from your brand's luxury line." Magnus' grip on his glass faltered. "Who? You haven't heard?" She smirked, jotting a note. "Anonymous artist, huge buzz. They're calling her the next big thing. Funny how she's rising just as your star's flickering." Cassandra shot Magnus a look, her nails digging into his arm. As the journalist walked away, Magnus muttered, "Find out who this whisperer is. I don't like surprises." The Diamond Whisperer's rise was unstoppable. A-list celebrities began wearing her pieces, discreetly at first, then brazenly. A pop star sported a sapphire-encrusted cuff at a red carpet event, sparking a flood of articles. Who is the Diamond Whisperer? The mysterious artist taking over high fashion. Kalen's connections ensured her work reached elite galleries in Paris, Milan, and Tokyo, each piece sold under strict anonymity. Seraphina, holed up in her Willow Hollow studio, was both exhilarated and overwhelmed. Orders poured in faster than she could create, and Kalen had hired a small team, vetted for loyalty, to handle logistics. She insisted on approving every piece, pouring her heart into each design. A ring with a fractured ruby symbolized her broken marriage, A tiara with interwoven pearls spoke of resilience weaving through pain. One afternoon, Marta burst into the studio, her face flushed. "You've got to see this," she said, thrusting a magazine at Seraphina. The cover featured a model draped in one of her necklaces, with the headline, "The Diamond Whisperer, Art or Revolution?" Seraphina's heart raced. "This is too much," she said, sinking into a chair. "I just wanted to create, not this." Marta laughed, patting her shoulder. "You're not just creating, girl. You're starting a movement. People feel your story in these pieces, even if they don't know it's you." That evening, Kalen called. "You're trending worldwide," he said, his voice calm but tinged with excitement. "A gallery in London just sold your choker for 6 figures. We need to talk strategy." Seraphina paced her cottage, her phone pressed to her ear. "I'm not ready to go public, Kalen. If Magnus finds out, he'll—" "He's distracted," Kalen interrupted. "His company's taking hits, and he's scrambling. This is your moment. Keep creating, and let me handle the rest." She hesitated, then agreed. "Okay. But no mistakes. I need to protect my baby." "You have my word," Kalen said, and she believed him. His motives were still a mystery, but his actions spoke of a loyalty she hadn't felt since before Magnus. Seraphina's success wasn't just about art, it was about purpose. Late one night, as she sketched in her studio, an idea took root. She'd been discarded, humiliated, left with nothing. How many other women had faced the same? With Kalen's guidance, she founded Seraphina Spark, a foundation to support women who'd been financially and emotionally exploited. The foundation operated in secret, its funding funneled through anonymous trusts to keep her identity hidden. At a clandestine meeting in Kalen's office, Seraphina outlined her vision. "I want to give them what I didn't have," she said, her voice fierce. "Resources, legal help, a chance to rebuild. No one should feel like they're nothing." Kalen leaned forward, his hands steepled. "It's bold. And risky. If this gets out, it could draw attention to you." "I know," she said, her jaw set. "But it's worth it. These women deserve to shine." Kalen nodded, pulling out a laptop. "I've got contacts, lawyers, counselors, financial advisors. We'll start small, pilot programs in a few cities. Discreet, but impactful." The first initiative launched in Willow Hollow, offering microgrants to local women escaping abusive situations. Seraphina met with the recipients in secret, wearing a scarf to shield her face. One woman, a single mother named Elena, clutched her hand and whispered, "Thank you. This means I can start over." Tears pricked Seraphina's eyes. "You're not starting over," she said softly. "You're building something new." The foundation's work spread, earning quiet praise on X. "Whoever's behind Seraphina Spark is a saint," one post read. "Helping women without asking for fame." The irony wasn't lost on Seraphina. She was still hiding, but her impact was growing. In New York, Cassandra Vale was unraveling. She sat in Magnus' penthouse, scrolling through X posts about the Diamond Whisperer. The jewelry was everywhere, on influencers, in magazines, even on the wrist of a senator's wife. Each piece felt like a taunt, a reminder that Magnus' attention was slipping. Hecuba Libra he'd grown distant, obsessed with the cracks in his empire, and Cassandra sensed a storm brewing. "Magnus," she called, tossing her phone onto the couch. "This whisperer thing is getting out of hand. It's overshadowing your brand." He glanced up from his laptop, his eyes bloodshot. "It's just jewelry. A fad." "It's not," she snapped, standing. "People are talking about her more than Thorntech. And those leaks about your company aren't helping." Magnus slammed his laptop shut. "Then fix it, Cassandra. That's what I pay you for." She bristled, her mind racing. Something about the Diamond Whisperer felt personal, like a shadow from Magnus' past. She dug deeper, hiring a private investigator to track the artist's origins. The trail led to Willow Hollow, but the artist's identity remained a fortress of secrecy. Late that night, Cassandra found a clue, a grainy photo on an X post, showing a woman at a Willow Hollow market, her face partially obscured. The auburn hair and delicate frame sparked a memory. "No," she whispered, her blood running cold. "Could it be Seraphina?" She confronted Magnus the next morning, shoving the photo in his face. "Look familiar." He frowned, then paled. "That's impossible. She's gone. Broke. Nothing." Cassandra's eyes narrowed. "Then why does this feel like her? If it is, she's coming for you, Magnus." He laughed, but it was hollow. "Seraphina. She's nobody." But doubt gnawed at him. The Diamond Whisperer's rise, the leaks, the whispers, it all felt too precise, too personal. For the first time, Magnus felt the ground shift beneath his empire. The invitation arrived in a cream envelope, its gold-embossed script gleaming under the soft light of Seraphina's cottage. She sat at her kitchen table, the scent of pine drifting through the open window, and stared at the words, "Thorntech Annual Charity Gala." Magnus Company was co-hosting the event in New York, a glittering affair attended by the city's elite. The note attached was from Kalen Vance, handwritten in his precise, elegant scrawl, "It's time. You're ready. K." Seraphina's heart pounded. For months, she'd hidden behind the pseudonym, the Diamond Whisperer, her jewelry conquering the world while she remained a ghost. But Kalen had been pushing her to step into the light. "Your story is your power," he'd said during their last meeting, his green eyes intense. "The world needs to see you, not just your art." She paced the cottage, her hand resting on her belly, now noticeably rounded at 6 months pregnant. The thought of facing Magnus, of standing in a room full of people who'd read the tabloid lies about her, made her stomach churn. But another part of her burned with resolve. She wasn't the broken woman he'd discarded. She was something more now, something unbreakable. She called Kalen, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Why this gala? Why now?" "Because," he replied, his tone calm but firm, "Magnus is vulnerable. His stock's dipping, his investors are nervous, and the press smells blood. You walk into that room as the Diamond Whisperer, and you'll shift the narrative. Permanently." Seraphina clutched the invitation, her fingers tracing the embossed letters. "What if he recognizes me? What if it backfires?" Kalen's voice softened. "He won't see you coming. And if he does, he'll be too late. You're not his wife anymore, Seraphina. You're a force." She spent the night sketching a new piece for the gala, a statement necklace, bold and defiant, with jagged diamonds set in a lattice of black and silver. It was a declaration of war, a piece that screamed resilience. As she worked, she whispered to her unborn child, "This is for us, little one. For our future." The ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria shimmered with opulence, crystal chandeliers casting prisms across gilded walls, waiters gliding with champagne flutes, and the hum of power brokers sealing deals in hushed tones. Seraphina stood at the entrance, her breath catching as she adjusted the necklace around her throat. The diamonds glinted like shards of ice, their edges sharp against the soft black velvet of her gown. Her auburn hair was swept into an elegant updo, and her eyes, lined with kohl, burned with quiet fire. Kalen stood beside her, impeccable in a tailored tuxedo, his scarf replaced by a silk tie. "You look like a queen," he murmured, offering his arm. "Ready to claim your throne?" She took his arm, her heart racing but her posture regal. "Let's do this." The double doors swung open, and the room fell silent. Heads turned, whispers rippling like a tide. Seraphina felt every eye on her, but she kept her gaze forward, her steps deliberate. Kalen's presence was a steady anchor, his hand warm against hers. Cameras flashed, and a murmur spread. "Is that the Diamond Whisperer?" Across the room, Magnus stood with Cassandra, his arm around her waist. He was mid-conversation with a senator when he froze, his eyes locking onto Seraphina. For a moment, his face was a mask of confusion, then disbelief. Cassandra followed his gaze, her red lips parting in a silent gasp. "Who is that?" A nearby heiress whispered to her companion, eyeing Seraphina's necklace. "That piece is divine." "It's her," the companion replied, voice hushed. "The Diamond Whisperer. Has to be." Seraphina and Kalen reached the center of the room, where a display showcased her latest collection, donated for the charity auction. The crowd parted, drawn to the glittering pieces, a tiara, a cuff, a ring, each one pulsing with raw emotion. A journalist approached, her recorder already out. "Miss Whisperer, can you confirm your identity?" Seraphina smiled, her voice clear but enigmatic. "Tonight, I'm here for the cause. The art speaks for itself. The journalist pressed, but Kalen stepped in, his tone smooth. Let's focus on the auction. These pieces are funding Seraphina Spark, a foundation for women rebuilding their lives. The mention of the foundation sparked murmurs of approval. Seraphina felt a surge of pride, but her eyes flicked to Magnus. He was staring, his jaw tight, his champagne flute forgotten in his hand. Magnus couldn't breathe. The woman across the room was a vision, poised, radiant, commanding the attention he'd always craved. But her face, those eyes, it couldn't be. Seraphina was gone, erased from his world, reduced to a footnote in his empire. Yet there she stood, escorted by Kalen Vance, a man whose wealth and influence rivaled his own. He turned to Cassandra, his voice low and urgent. Is that her? Tell me I'm seeing things. Cassandra's eyes were daggers. It's her. I knew it. That bitch played us. Magnus' mind raced. The Diamond Whisperer, the artist who'd stolen his brand spotlight, was Seraphina? The woman he'd called outdated, the wife he'd discarded while pregnant? His hands shook as he set down his glass, the room suddenly too warm, too loud. He pushed through the crowd, ignoring Cassandra's hissed protests. He needed to confront her, to reclaim control. But as he neared, Kalen stepped forward, his presence a wall. Magnus, Kalen said, his voice cool. Enjoying the evening? Magnus ignored him, his eyes locked on Seraphina. What are you doing here? He demanded, his voice louder than intended. Heads turned, phones discreetly raised to capture the moment. Seraphina met his gaze, unflinching. Supporting a cause, she said, her tone calm but laced with steel. Something you might not understand. The crowd murmured, sensing drama. Magnus' face reddened. You think you can waltz in here and humiliate me? You're nothing without me. Her lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile. I was never nothing, Magnus. You just couldn't see it. Before he could respond, the auctioneer called for attention, announcing the first bid on Seraphina's tiara. The price soared, $200,000, then $500,000, then a staggering $1.2 million. The room erupted in applause, and Magnus' words drowned in the noise. He stood, frozen, as Seraphina turned away, her head high, leaving him in the shadow of her triumph. The gala's keynote speech was Seraphina's moment. She stood at the podium, the spotlight illuminating her necklace, which seemed to pulse with defiance. The crowd was silent, expectant. She'd rehearsed this moment with Kalen, but now, facing hundreds of faces, some curious, some skeptical, she felt the weight of her truth. Thank you for being here, she began, her voice steady. Tonight isn't about me. It's about turning pain into purpose, about taking broken fragments and forging them into something unbreakable. She paused, her eyes scanning the room, lingering briefly on Magnus. I know what it's like to be discarded, to be told you're not enough. But every piece you see tonight, every diamond, every curve, was born from that pain. And through Seraphina's spark, we're helping women transform their own fragments into masterpieces. The crowd leaned forward, captivated. A few recognized her name, whispering, Seraphina? As in, Thorne. The connection spread like wildfire. She continued, her voice rising with conviction. We don't need permission to shine. We don't need someone else's validation. We are enough. She touched her necklace, the diamonds catching the light. This is my story. And it's theirs too. The applause was deafening, but the Real explosion came online. X lit up with posts, the Diamond Whisperer is Seraphina Thorne? Magnus' ex-wife just owned that gala. From dumped to dynasty, holy comeback. Clips of her speech went viral, her words resonating with millions. The media pounced, digging into Magnus' past, unearthing the smear campaign he'd orchestrated against her. Backstage, Kalen pulled her into a quiet corner. You were magnificent, he said, his eyes warm. The world knows now. Seraphina's hands trembled, but she smiled. I'm scared, Kalen. But I feel free. He squeezed her shoulder. You should. You just changed the game. The fallout was swift and brutal. By morning, Magnus was trending for all the wrong reasons. X posts dissected his treatment of Seraphina, with hashtags like hashtag Justice for Seraphina and hashtag Diamond Whisperer trending globally. Old articles about her instability were debunked as Magnus' PR tactics, and new stories emerged. Former employees revealing his manipulative behavior, vendors exposing shady deals. The public, already souring on his arrogance, turned decisively against him. Seraphina woke to a flood of messages, support from strangers, thank yous from women helped by Seraphina's spark, even apologies from old friends who'd believed Magnus' lies. She sat on her cottage porch, sipping tea, her phone buzzing non-stop. Marta joined her, grinning. "You've started a revolution, girl." "It doesn't feel real," Seraphina admitted, her hand on her belly. "I just wanted to survive." "You did more than survive," Marta said. "You showed the world what surviving looks like." In New York, Magnus' penthouse was a war room. Cassandra paced, her voice shrill. "We need to spin this, Magnus. Say she's lying, that she's unstable." "Enough," he roared, slamming his fist on the table. "She's not lying, and you know it. She's got the world eating out of her hand." Cassandra's eyes flashed. "Then fight back. Sue her. Destroy her." But Magnus was silent, staring at a news article on his phone. Seraphina Thorne, the woman who turned betrayal into brilliance. For the first time, he felt something he hadn't in years. Fear. Not of losing his company, but of facing the truth. Seraphina was no longer his to control. She was a force, and he was crumbling in her wake. The New York skyline loomed gray and cold outside Magnus Thorne's penthouse office, a stark contrast to the chaos within. Thornteca's stock plummeted 15% overnight, a freefall triggered by the viral revelation of Seraphina's identity as the Diamond Whisperer. X was ablaze with posts dissecting Magnus' past. He smeared his pregnant wife to save his image. Hashtag Thorne Tech Tanks. Investors, spooked by the mounting scandals, began pulling out, and board members whispered of a leadership change. Magnus sat at his glass desk, his tie loosened, his face haggard. Cassandra paced behind him, her heels clicking like gunfire. "We can still salvage this," she insisted, her voice sharp. "Issue a statement, say you're the victim, that Seraphina manipulated the narrative." Magnus laughed bitterly, swirling a half-empty glass of bourbon. "Victim? The world's eating her story up, Cassandra. She's a saint, and I'm the devil who dumped her." Cassandra stopped, her eyes narrowing. "Then hit her where it hurts. Her foundation, her brand, dig up dirt, anything." He shook his head, staring at a framed photo of himself on a magazine cover, now a mocking relic. "She's untouchable. Kalen Vance is bankrolling her, and he's got more pull than I ever will." Across the country in Willow Hollow, Seraphina watched the news unfold on her laptop, her cottage bathed in morning light. The headlines were relentless. Thorne Tech in crisis as CEO faces backlash. She felt no joy, only a quiet resolve. Her phone buzzed with a text from Kalen. "It's working. Stay focused." She stepped into her studio, where a new piece, a diamond-encrusted brooch shaped like a phoenix, lay half-finished. It was her boldest design yet, a symbol of her rebirth. As she worked, Marta poked her head in, grinning. "Your ex is imploding, girl. You see the ex posts." Seraphina nodded, her hand steady as she set a diamond. "I didn't want revenge, Marta. I just wanted to be seen." "Well, the world sees you now," Marta said, squeezing her shoulder. "And they love you." By evening, Thornteca's board called an emergency meeting. Magnus, cornered, faced demands for his resignation. "You've become a liability," one director said, his voice cold. Magnus' empire, built on ruthless ambition, was crumbling under the weight of his own hubris. Seraphina wasn't content to watch Magnus fall. She was building her own empire. With Kalen's resources and her own vision, she made calculated moves to cement her dominance. At a secret meeting in his sleek Manhattan office, Kalen laid out a plan. "Thornteca's luxury division is bleeding," he said, sliding a dossier across the table. "Their jewelry line can't compete with yours. We can acquire their suppliers, lock them out." Seraphina studied the dossier, her fingers tracing the numbers. "This feels personal," she admitted. "I don't want to become like him." Kalen leaned forward, his green eyes intense. "This isn't about revenge, Seraphina. It's about power. You've earned it. Use it to protect what you've built. She nodded, her jaw set. Okay. Let's do it. Over the next weeks, Seraphina's team, still operating under her anonymity, quietly bought out key gemstone suppliers and secured exclusive contracts with top artisans. The Diamond Whisperers brand expanded, with pop-up galleries in London, Dubai, and Los Angeles. Each piece sold out within hours, the demand fueled by her story of resilience. Ex-posts raved, "The Diamond Whisperer isn't just jewelry, it's a movement." Hashtag Seraphina's Spark. One evening, Seraphina visited a Seraphina's Spark safe house in New York, where women received job training and legal aid. She met a young woman named Tara, who clutched a resume and whispered, "Your foundation gave me a chance. I was trapped like you were." Seraphina's eyes stung as she hugged her. "You're not trapped anymore. You're free." Back in her hotel, she called Kaylin. "The foundation's growing faster than I expected," she said, her voice tired but determined. "We need more funding." "I've got investors lined up," he replied. "But they'll want to meet you. No more hiding." She hesitated, then agreed. "After the baby's born. I need to protect her first." "Understood," Kaylin said, a rare warmth in his tone. "You're calling the shots, Seraphina." Magnus' world was collapsing, and the legal battles were the final blow. Seraphina's public unmasking had inspired others to speak out. Former employees filed lawsuits, alleging workplace harassment and unethical practices. A group of women, emboldened by Seraphina's spark, came forward with stories of Magnus' coercion and manipulation, their testimonies painting a damning picture. In a sterile law office, Seraphina met with a team of attorneys Kaylin had assembled. The lead lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Vivian, laid out the strategy. "We've got enough to tie him up in court for years," she said, tapping a stack of documents. "Fraud, defamation, even potential criminal charges. Your story opened the floodgates." Seraphina shifted uncomfortably, her hand on her belly. "I don't want to drag this out. I just want justice, for me, for my daughter, for them." Vivian nodded, her expression softening. "Then we'll push for settlements where we can, but Magnus won't go quietly. He's already countersuing, claiming you defamed him." "Let him try," Seraphina said, her voice steady. "He can't rewrite the truth." The lawsuits hit the media like a storm. X exploded with support for Seraphina. "Magnus Thorne is done." Hashtag Team Seraphina. A viral video showed a protest outside Thornteca's headquarters, with signs reading, "Diamonds over tyrants." Magnus, holed up in his penthouse, watched the footage, his hands shaking. Cassandra had left, her parting words venomous. "You're a sinking ship, Magnus. I'm not going down with you." One night, alone, he called his lawyer. "Settle," he growled. "Whatever it takes, make this go away." But the damage was done. Thornteca's valuation tanked, and Magnus' fortune dwindled as legal fees piled up. He stared out at the city he'd once ruled, a king dethroned by the woman he'd underestimated. Seraphina's spark became a global force, its mission expanding to dozens of countries. Safe houses, scholarships, and job programs empowered thousands of women, funded by the soaring success of the Diamond Whisperers brand. Seraphina, now 8 months pregnant, worked tirelessly, her studio a hive of creativity. Her latest collection, Unbreakable, debuted to universal acclaim, with pieces like the Phoenix brooch fetching millions at auction. At a press conference in Paris, Seraphina stepped into the public eye for the first time since the gala. The room buzzed with reporters, their cameras flashing as she took the stage, radiant in a sapphire blue gown and a diamond choker. "I'm Seraphina Thorne," she said, her voice clear and strong. "The Diamond Whisperer isn't a mystery anymore. She's me, a woman who turned betrayal into beauty, pain into power." The crowd erupted, and X lit up with praise. Seraphina Thorne is a legend. Hashtag Unbreakable. Her story inspired countless others, from artists to survivors, and her foundation became a beacon of hope. Back in Willow Hollow, Seraphina sat with Marta, sipping tea as they watched the sunset. "I never thought I'd be here," she admitted, cradling her belly. "I thought he'd broken me." Marta smiled, her eyes crinkling. "He tried, but you're a diamond girl. Pressure only made you shine brighter." Kaylin visited that evening, bringing news. Magnus settled the lawsuits. He's selling off Thornteka's assets to cover the costs. He's finished. Seraphina nodded, a weight lifting. Good. I'm done looking back. The birth of Seraphina's daughter, Aurora, marked the dawn of her new era. In a sunlit hospital room, she held the tiny bundle, her heart swelling with love. Kalen stood nearby, his usually stoic face softened. She's beautiful, he said, handing Seraphina a small box. Inside was a tiny silver locket, engraved with a diamond-studded star, a nod to the sonogram locket she'd once planned to give Magnus. Thank you, she whispered, tears in her eyes. For everything. Kalen shrugged, a rare grin breaking through. You did the hard part. Months later, Seraphina stood on the balcony of her new headquarters in New York, a sleek building housing the Diamond Whisperer's global operations and Seraphina Spark. Her empire was thriving, with stores in every major city and partnerships with ethical minds to ensure sustainability. Aurora, now 6 months old, gurgled in a stroller nearby, a tiny crown-shaped pendant around her neck. At a gala celebrating the Foundation's first anniversary, Seraphina took the stage, her presence commanding. This isn't my victory alone, she said, her voice resonating. It's for every woman who's been told she's not enough. We are diamonds, unbreakable, brilliant, eternal. The crowd roared, and X erupted with tributes. Seraphina Thorne is the queen we need. #Diamond Dynasty. Magnus, now a footnote in her story, faded into obscurity, his name synonymous with failure. As Seraphina stepped off the stage, Kalen approached, a glass of champagne in hand. You've built something extraordinary, he said. What's next? She smiled, looking at Aurora, then at the city skyline. Everything. This is just the beginning. The end.